So how would that be different compared to maybe some students who aren't in the same demographic? What might they be saying instead?
They don't do homework because they're lazy.
Yeah. And
Because
again,
it sucks. Don't want to do it.
yeah.
They don't receive any support.
They don't receive any support.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the students who
They don't do their homeworks.
Uh-huh.
So they usually don't receive some of them. They don't have any support.
Okay. So are you talking like these students that maybe were working with Roosevelt, or the students who might have more privilege? And
I think it depends.
it depends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there a difference, you think? Would we say there's a difference between the two demographics, if we identify them?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference. I think that you want to be careful on how, like, by saying that the privileged students don't have like issues going on either at home.
Mhm.
It might appear differently, but to focus on Roosevelt, I think that yes, some of the issues like might be different, and us be aware of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was all powerful, but really took it home at the end where he said that it's not the education systems aren't failing. They're actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is exactly what we talk about. We talk about institutions like the prison industrial complex. We talk about even like colleges and all that. It's based around this idea that if you work hard enough and do all these things and you can succeed, but to be able to even access those systems that are based around all these privileged identities is to basically fall in line with all that imperialistic, capitalistic kind of perspective. So these systems are succeeding in what they were made to do in a sense, because they just perpetuate this same kind of dominant culture. So that's
Yeah, I see that perspective. Thank you.
we're trying
Just
to
want to push back a little bit. Implications and assumptions. That's what I've heard of. Roosevelt students, privileged students. That's what I'm hearing the comparison. So the implication or the assumption is there are no white privileged students at Roosevelt, or there's no privileged students at Roosevelt. So I'm pushing that back at you and continue the conversation.
So with that said, and Roosevelt's, yeah, and I don't know the demographic, like maybe you have more of that, but apparently there is, yeah. So I think maybe you were saying earlier that there is, it's not like privileged students don't actually have stuff that they're dealing with, but then it might be different.
Yeah, it might appear, like, I think everyone's step will appear differently. And I think that's a great point how the assumption has been made that the privilege and Roosevelt are like different. And that's like a huge reminder. I think the question was, what happens if the kids weren't like the demographic we were talking about?
So I wonder whatever the students are in Roosevelt, they're operating under the same hierarchies that influence the educational system itself, like you were mentioning, Stace. When you talked about capitalism, can you say more about that? You mentioned capitalism and how that influences the educational system, and how I think you alluded that it sounded like you're saying it's more in line. Our educational system is more in line that perpetuating
with
these
the
hierarchies.
what's the word I'm looking for? With the values of a Western European, capitalistic, imperialistic society.
Mm-hmm.
Just how they're set up. Who are the teachers? What are the missions? Like how do they execute these missions in school? Standardized testing, all that stuff that's geared towards, like we were talking about earlier, even the tests themselves, when women did better, they redid the test so men would do better. So even how they structure all these things, and it goes deeper than that.
Sure.
And in terms of what Nike was saying is like, I didn't, if that was the assumption you got from that, I'm sorry, I was even walking in the halls looking at all the students, we had to do that. You could see just even the class difference, which could be a lot of other things, but the clothes, were the clothes worn down, the shoes the kids are wearing, like all this stuff, like you could see that there are different, obviously intersecting oppressions and privileges that are interacting with all these kids. Not all are assumed to be, all marginalized or don't have certain privileges. So that's something I did notice that happens in any kind of space, I think, which you have to always be cognizant of.
Yeah.
I think kind of in line with Stacy's saying about capitalism and the education system's kind of being built towards this American dream, which is a capitalistic society. Inherent in that type of system, there's always people at the bottom and people that you need to step on in order to get on top. Even in meritocracy, it's like you can't, the competition is inherent in that type of system and that way of being. And so while schools are built to try to promote growth in some people, it's inherent that some people are going to be at the bottom, and that will never ever change unless the entire attitude and approach of the system has changed.
So structure the same.
Because capitalism requires that there be a lower class, essentially. For it to function the way it's supposed to function, it requires to have a lower class, like you were saying, or it doesn't work.
So with that inequity, how would that show up? How would that show up within a school? How would that trickle down? What would be something that we would notice within the school? And maybe not at a micro level, but maybe even if we can't bridge that gap, maybe at a meta level, i.e. maybe administration or teachers or even else.
See in the hierarchies, just put that, what we just mentioned, hierarchical
Right.
positions of people who are in those positions, and who are the ones creating the plans, that teach the kids. Where are those coming from? The work plans, the teachers do. Who makes the federal government makes the things you have to know. We decide what knowledge there is to know. We create, we disseminate that knowledge based on our perspective, our view of what is important.
So we create curriculum off of
We reproduce
how
that
we track
knowledge.
from what the government sets up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying is we reproduce that knowledge in how we teach. So we decide from what history, what perspective, and then we teach that perspective to kids. And then there's obviously a hierarchy within that. You have this district, the principal, assistant principal, who are in those positions. And I don't know, I'm talking a lot, so let me step back.
Yeah.
And
Also, I was thinking having certain stereotypes or assumptions about certain group of people and maintaining and communicating with those people based on those stereotypes and assumptions in their head.
Right.
I think very similar to that, well, it's just that, biases and assumptions are very, very natural. People do it all the time, but it's based off of past information for the most part. Unfortunately, the way that this system has been developed is that for certain groups of people they've been systematically victimized to be failures according to the standards that the systems are built on. And so while you're making these assumptions based off of past information, that information is inaccurate and it doesn't highlight the things that need to be focused on in order for the ultimate goal to be reached, which is whatever full potential or being, the best civil person that you can be.
Right. So it perpetuates itself, it sounds like.
I think a real powerful line from the person speaking was, it goes, shoot, I'm sorry. Oh, a reoccurring cycle built to recycle the trash out of the system. I feel like that to me is just the, like a sad visual of going through schools and it says classrooms are overpacked, teachers are paid less, we're taking tests home, that when we go home it's stressful, so we don't have time, we have too much responsibility to do the homework. And you come to class and the couple of times it takes to ask, did you sleep well, or are you like what's going on, and check in. Other things are going on that's causing the teachers, maybe they don't have time to do that, or there's there's just tons of responsibility going on. And it's all just being impacted, and I feel like that one line,
A result of
to
that.
me, made a really visual of the sad process that's occurring.
Right.
Last question.
So the structural inequality kind of rolls into, the tracking, how we track students, how we categorize students, which is again dictated. The standardized assessments you were talking about, Stace, and diversity, even among staff. I think Dr. McDowell did a paper about how schools say, yeah, we're a diverse staff, but when you dig deeper, it's really not the case. So it's this invisible curriculum, it seems like, that has this guiding hand that plays a role in But,
I was thinking again, like you're saying, how there's that assumption that if you're at a school with Title I or something, that a lot of people are gonna be, like, there's gonna be no privileged students, and I was thinking the opposite of schools that are really wealthy, and everyone's assumed to be wealthy. I think, I was just thinking about that, because that was kind of where I grew up, like a really wealthy town, and so if you're going to that school, you're assumed, oh, you must have some kind of money or something, so there's all those assumptions that go into that, those spaces that just, I was thinking about, like, that was interesting.
I have a question. Are teachers in wealthy schools, are they paid more than poor schools?
What was the question?
Are private school teachers paid more than public school
Or
teachers?
wealthy school systems pay more than other schools?
No,
No.
at least not.
I don't think so.
well,
It differs.
wealthier areas, so to speak, they get more cost per student. I think it's ACA or something. They get more per student than